welcome to Conversations in Color. This is the show where we try to talk about difficult conversations in a way that honors the 3 H's: humility, honesty, and humanity. I am Salika Ducksworth-Lawton, and I am your host today. And today we will be talking with Dr. Jennifer Bantz, who is an OB-GYN. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Shift Coffee, the Pablo at the Confluence, University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, Converge Radio, and of course, Uniting Bridges. Please sit back and join me for this conversation on what do we want to see in K-12 health and sex education, and what do we want to see in community health, women's health education. So welcome to Conversations in Color. We are here and we want to have talks with each other about difficult conversations and difficult topics, but in a humble and honest and sincere way. And we're here today with Dr. Jennifer Bantz. She's a local OB-GYN, and we're going to talk about a range of things, drink some coffee here at Shift, roll all through all sorts of things related to kids' health, women's health, etc. Hold on to your hats and glasses. It's going to be an interesting ride. So let me start by saying I am so happy you're here.
I'm glad to be here.
And Dr. Bantz is actually my doctor, so I'm like recommending her. She's really good. But we wanted to start off talking about what, given what you see and what you're thinking, and this is all your opinions, do you think K-12 sexual and health education should look like? I mean, here in Wisconsin, it's what's called abstinence plus, in that they'll identify contraceptives, but they will give you their failure rates. They won't tell the kids how to use them or anything like that. And they really stress abstinence. Mm-hmm. So a lot of kids don't get what's called comprehensive sex education or a comprehensive health education in terms of periods, in terms of male reproductive organs and issues that go with them, in terms of some of the things that we out there would seem as non-controversial, but some people get kind of wicked out about them. So what do you think should be there in order for our kids, to be safe and healthy?
Yeah, so knowing I was coming here to talk on this topic, I did a little bit of research and kind of thought back to my experience on sex health education in 5th grade. And, it was a little frightening and very brief. So it was missing a lot of components. And it's funny that I end up what I do now, because I feel like, at least with my patients and who I come in contact with, I kind of want to make up for that lack of education I had. But it's difficult because I'm not in the schools. And I'm getting people coming to me with a supportive mother to discuss birth control and prevention of sexual transmitted STIs or sexually transmitted diseases. And, and I can educate them there. But, reading up with the CDC and their recommendations on comprehensive sex education, which is really good, and I think it's awesome. It kind of talks about going from, kindergarten all the way through, and starting with age-appropriate education, and starting, in that early kindergarten, early years in elementary school with hygiene. And then it comes to, maybe 4th grade with the girls, talking about getting their periods and what to expect. Because the girls, we tend to be getting our periods a little bit earlier than we did 25 years ago. We're maturing faster. So I think girls need to have that education sooner. My daughter's in 4th grade, and we've already been talking about it because her friends are getting their periods, and she wants to know. She's curious. So it's good to have that. I have that relationship with my daughter. That's to be expected, obviously, for what I do. But I think in the schools, tying that into their science curriculum, talking about just general facts, be very factual and give girls this education, probably by themselves because they're more comfortable. It could be somebody that comes into the schools and discuss that with the girls and what to expect and not to be so scared and what we can do to help with their periods. General hygiene. There's lots of stuff out there for girls now. Really cool underwear that they can wear, menstrual cups, that's great for the environment. And I've learned a lot from my younger patients, actually. They fill me in on all this stuff. And I learn from them. It's great to learn from your patients because we are always learning. So I've learned from them about these items that are out there and how to, what to expect and what's normal, what's abnormal, how can you help with painful periods, acne, your mood, that sort of thing. So they know that's normal. And then once you know what normal is, what's abnormal and when should you ask for help. And as we progress, I think through the school and then the boys getting their own education, what's normal, their changes to expect and going on from there. And, really when it comes to sexual health education, it needs to be age appropriate and factual and, and talking about, kids are going to be sexually active. We do know that when we do discuss contraception, and kids are educated on how to use contraception, that actually the pregnancy rate does not go up. Kids do not have more sex because we're teaching them about sex. They actually have less sex, according to some of the studies I've been looking at most recently. And they're prepared. They know how to make decisions. And that kind of comes into more the middle school years about being respectful of yourself and respectful of others, and understanding your feelings and what you're feeling. And then in middle school, it's just tough years. And especially now, I think. I couldn't imagine being in middle school.
I know my daughter she just turned 15. And she had sex ed in the schools in the 7th grade.
Yep.
And we chose concurrently to have her an owl through one of the churches here. Mm-hmm. And I think her entire conversation with us about that is 1, boys are icky, 2, I'm never ever giving you children. And 3, they did what? And you did what? And really? I mean, she definitely was not intrigued and had no interest in it. And I think that could be said for the rest of her friends.
Yeah, well, that's good.
But I mean, I think that's the reality that I see of the statistics that you're seeing. Mm-hmm. The more she has known about it, the less really interested she was in. And I think, for me, because of the predator issue, mm-hmm. I feel that we need to be realistic mm-hmm. about talking to them earlier.
I agree.
If that mm-hmm. makes sense.
It does. I think about my daughter who's in 4th grade, how to watch out for certain situations and why that is, and bringing it down to their level at that age and then middle school, because they need to, social media, that's huge, and people they come in contact with. I mean, we never had that growing up.
No.
At all.
I think my sex ed discussion with my mother was along the lines of keep your skirt down and your legs together. I came from that generation.
Yeah.
The popular saying is you don't need birth control, you need leg control. You don't need birth control, you need to put an aspirin between your knees and keep your knees shut.
Yeah, aspirin for everything.
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 There was, I think, a lot of, on one hand, the people in my neighborhood were very aware of that. Where I grew up in Slidell, Louisiana, I think my friend Avis and I, out of maybe 25 girls, mm-hmm. the only two who weren't pregnant before the age of 19.
Wow. Wow.
When you think about that.
That's huge.
But that's Louisiana. We
Yeah.
didn't have anything that looked like sexual education. I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't really know where babies came from until maybe I was 16. And I picked up a copy. My mom had a copy of Self magazine.
Yeah.
I read that and I was like, no.
Yeah.
And then I had sex ed in what was that? My junior year, and they had it in mixed classes.
Junior year?
Junior year.
That's late.
Well, I had moved to Ohio from Louisiana. That's when we had, that was the very first and only sex education class I ever had.
Yeah.
Literally.
Wow. Wow.
And I mean, I know it's still like that in some places.
Yeah. Yeah. It's scary because we know that, getting that education is going to help prevent, unplanned pregnancies, teen pregnancies, which actually we have seen the number go down significantly through the years because of education and contraception in certain parts of the country. Where I've worked, I haven't seen the teen pregnancy rate because we have more reliable contraception out there for girls, for women. So that's good. That has changed. But there's still missing pieces. There's still lots going on with regards to sexually transmitted infections. Lots of things that word needs to get out. To help prevent all these things that are out there, and and the pregnancies too, and just a lot of misinformation. I think that when it doesn't get filled in factually through solid education, they get a lot of misinformation, and kind of leading them down the wrong path.
We saw about 5 weeks ago an attack on 2 sex education books that were at the middle school level.
Oh, really?
When the people went to the school board and they had to clear out the school board before the April 5th election. 2 of the books that were being attacked were clearly textbooks that were one was at South Middle School. And it was explaining how certain sexual acts were performed, but also how certain contraception
is used.
Yes. And the parents, it seems like there's a range today with parents. I mean, for me, because I'm afraid of, my daughter had already gotten inappropriate pictures through a flip phone. I'm like, how do you send them through a flip phone?
Yeah.
I just don't know. When she was 11 or 12. And those were just through email. Somebody randomly sending them through her email. And I know that happened to a bunch of her friends as well. And yet I'm seeing parents who somehow think they can get their kids to age 16 and have them have absolutely no idea of reproductive anything.
Yeah, not this day and age.
How do we deal with that?
Yeah. I mean, that's tough. I mean, that's where it comes down to that's the tough one. The education and kind of covering comprehensive education to all children. Because people come from different backgrounds, more conservative backgrounds, more liberal backgrounds. Where do we come in the middle? I think by banning books, banning textbooks, kids are still going to get the information and not in the right way, And I think kids will seek out those textbooks for the correct information, and by banning it doesn't mean people are going to want to look at it even more. The kids that don't have that, who need that education, but they probably won't get it from the right place. And I just don't agree with banning anything. My mom was a children's librarian, so she just up and livid. She's almost 80, bless her heart, but she gets livid when there's any banning of anything because she just doesn't agree with that. She's a librarian. Books are there for us to learn, and not to be banned. So, yeah, that's always a tough one. My upbringing was very conservative. So it's changed through the years being in women's health because there's a lot of information we don't get, and it doesn't get out in the right channels. And it's really a disservice to women and to children and young girls, because I see it from my standpoint. And, and it really, those decisions we make at a young age affects us throughout our lives. It can be a variety of ways, but that's a tough one. What do we do with those books? It's, yeah, I struggle with that. I don't agree with that. I think they should be accessible, but.
Well, see, I struggle with it too because, unlike here, I grew up in a neighborhood where in my public junior high, maybe 50 girls. 5 girls pregnated 12.
At age 12?
Yeah, another 10 at 13.
Yeah.
This is 1980, 81. And those girls, when I would go back and forth, my family moved back to Louisiana when I was in college. All of them, when you have children that early, it's very hard to just even finish your GED.
Oh, yeah.
My mother ran Head Start 0 to 3 for a couple of years. And just to get them to stop at the 1 was hard. And a number of the girls in her Head Start had been told by the boys, that if they just had it outside of their pants, or if they didn't put it all the way in, or all of this kind of stuff, that they wouldn't get pregnant.
And they have no idea.
And some of my daughter's friends have been reporting that same misinformation today. Especially at that, I was a Girl Scout leader, 11, 12, 13, you hear these girls talking and it's like, the school bus scares me at this point. But also the girls' locker room, the girls' bathroom does, because they're getting this misinformation.
Yeah.
It almost feels like really we need to have the conversation at 10, 11, 12, maybe to keep the child molesters, the predators, these older boys who, one of my friends, I'm not going to say the name, but she's watching this program, her 12-year-old was getting hit and harassed by a 16-year-old who really was who wanted to have sex with the 12-year-old. And the family had to take some very harsh measures. But one of the things they did have to do is tell the 12-year-old what was what, so that she wouldn't believe his misinformation.
Yeah. No, yeah. And my daughter was in a situation when she was 7, where she was pressured by a boy who was, I don't know, maybe 6, 7 years older. And I had a talk with her about, personal space and no one touching you. Conversations we should have with our children at a very young age, and she was young. And the situation, she was pressured in a certain situation, and she said no, and kept saying that, and ran off and said no. My mom said no. Doesn't fully understand what's going on, but understands that that's the wrong thing. And thank goodness I had that conversation with her, and I praised her for that in that situation. And I never thought that would happen at such a young age with people I knew. But that's education, and that's young, and that happens. We see it in the news, and we don't see it, and we know what's going on, just unfortunately with trafficking in that sort of situation, that kids need to know, that's a young age, and that's elementary school. Yeah.
Yeah, hey, I found a study that I think you may have been referencing. This is in the American Journal of Nursing. It says teens who receive comprehensive sex education were 60% less likely. You know what? Let me retract that. I'm reading this wrong. It says teens who receive comprehensive sex education were 60% less likely to report becoming pregnant or impregnating someone else than teens with no sex education. Yeah, and then 50% less likely to report pregnancies than teens with abstinence-only education. So it seems like abstinence-only education also makes it difficult to, or like kind of scared to, if you do become pregnant, like to bring it up. So yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting.
Well, for my generation, if you were preparing to have sex or doing it deliberately, you were considered a slut or loose. It was one thing to be carried away. And then you'd have the baby and people would forgive you. They'd still call you a slut behind your back, but it was seen as somehow less bad.
Interesting.
But I mean, that may be a religious culture in the South. Although I've seen a little bit of it here. I'm trying to break that culture and say, but I've also known women, you know, especially when I was in Ohio and when I'm in larger urban areas, mothers who will deliberately put their children on Depo or I can't remember what was the one they put in the arms.
The Nexplanon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or on the pill, but not usually the pill because teenage girls
Can't take a
they
pill.
can't remember
Yeah.
it.
Nope.
But they do it deliberately, not just for birth control, but also for birth control, but also because of really bad periods.
Right. Right.
And I think people don't understand the duality of that. And I know that my child's sex education didn't talk about that at all. Which, I mean, it feels like to me for health education, they should be talking about the fact that some of these contraceptives are also used for acne. Some of them are used for really horrible period pain. Some of them, and some, I think I'm pronouncing the word right, abortifacients.
Abortifacients. Right.
Are used for miscarriages. If we can't have that in K-12, how do we get, I mean, you're seeing this as a doctor. Do you think people are getting this information at all? Are they missing it? Are you having to be the first line of defense for education?
Yeah, I think the situations where I've found, because I'm seeing these girls typically come in with their mother, and their mother knows this, you know, sometimes they're my patients, you know, they have an intrauterine device, an IUD, and their daughter's not sexually active, but she's got really horrible periods, and they know there's certain IUDs that can really help with that, okay? IUDs get a bad rap, and they shouldn't, because IUDs are safe. They are safe nowadays. Maybe 40 years ago, and in other countries, perhaps not. Higher risk for infection, you know, perhaps more an abortifacient, but the IUDs used in our country, if we use them as for help with our periods or for birth control, aren't. They can be, but generally are not. So those women are coming in, those young girls, because of their moms. You know, the moms are educated and they know the difference. They've learned through their own experience, like, yeah, there's ways we can help you. And so, and I think they're getting that from home. I don't think they're getting it from the school. And I tell older women, I said, hey, you know, we can start you on some pills or some, you know, you could do a Depo-Provera shot, your periods go away. You can do IUDs. You know, all these different regimens we have for patients is not for birth control, but it's actually for their periods to make their life better. Because you think about, you know, what women go through each month. I mean, it's, you know, it can be quite torturous for some women. It just really impacts their life with the amount of pain some women go through and the heavy bleeding where they're anemic. I mean, it's just scary what women think is normal. Older women are hemorrhaging, you know, and they need a blood transfusion. I'm like, that's not normal. We can help you. You know, so there was a lack of education. You know, they didn't get that from their mother because our mothers never talked about this. I mean, my mom didn't, but.
Well, my mom didn't, and I came from a sports culture where the track coach would greet you with, you run when your period is up, you run when your period is down. I don't care if you have cramps. I don't care if you are vomiting. You're gonna run.
I got off. I didn't. I just came from a track meet, and it's just like, my mom was like, "You're gonna get toxic shock. Use tampons." I mean, I played tennis. I played track. I needed tampons, but no, I'm gonna get toxic shock. Misinformation from my mom. And no one changed that education for me. So I wouldn't run those sports because it just wasn't going to happen.
Well, we did them with pads, and I think this is, and I'm apologizing to Justin, this may be TMI for him. I think my generation was the last generation where we didn't just have the elastic, we had those little...
the whole on mechanical,
lady diapers.
Oh,
you know what I mean.
They did the belt thing.
Yeah, the belt thing.
See, they taught me about that in 5th grade. I was like, God, I want to go. I don't want to be a girl. I was like, I back out. I'm not doing this.
I told my mom exactly why did you do this to me? Why did you do this to me?
Yeah.
And the thing with tampons where I was people believed if you use tampons you wouldn't be a virgin anymore.
Yes.
So no one would teach that. And I know that the teenage girls I'm seeing today don't know how to put them in.
No, right. No, I see girls just for that, to teach them how to place their tampon. Mm-hmm.
And some of them are coming to their college professors.
Oh, wow.
So,
interesting. They don't feel comfortable, or they don't have maybe a mother figure or somebody at home that can help them.
Well, I think too, some of them are afraid if they talk to their moms about that, they're, well,
Well, but it's interesting. I always try to, I feel like in my job, I'm always like, I feel like, gosh, I can make things so much better for you. Why suffer? And there's lots of information we can give women nowadays, because we have so much more to help us with our cycles and everything, and perimenopause and menopause, all these things, and that has to do with our education in the beginning, but it starts somewhere, and it starts somewhere and you build from there. And and I think, and also when you talk about abortifacients, when patients have miscarriages, and we provide medications to help women with their miscarriages. They come in, they're diagnosed that the heartbeat, there's not a heartbeat. And what can we do to help them with the process from a medical standpoint, not the emotional standpoint? And that's a whole nother issue, obviously, and a big issue. But how can we help them and help prevent a surgery? And we use medication called misoprostol, and we also use mifepristone, RU486, and that significantly helps pass the pregnancy more efficiently and help prevent hemorrhaging and blood transfusions and emergency surgeries. So people don't know that. They really don't know that. And it's fairly interesting. So, but that literature has been out there, 10, 15 years. And we use that in our practice for patients that have miscarriages. But there's a lot of misinformation about that, and people get up in arms. But there's multiple use for different medications, but sometimes off-label. But just people don't know, and they're ignorant, and then a lot of misinformation gets spread, and that is not a service to women,
Do you get the feeling that in K-12, and this isn't to criticize the sex ed teachers because they're controlled by the school boards, and to be honest, it's this community at large. Mm-hmm. I remember, was it 10 or 12 years ago, a sex ed teacher got fired for talking about condoms and herpes or something like that.
I think I heard about that. Yeah.
And it was, but do you get the feeling, because I get the feeling here, that our kids are not told how dangerous pregnancy can be? Mm-hmm. I remember that being rammed into my head with my first pregnancy.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say it like that. Yeah, I've not thought of that quite like that, but it is true, because young girls, teenagers, are so much higher risk for lots of things. Preterm labor, which I see, hemorrhaging, infections, also preeclampsia, significant hypertension, and those young girls are at higher risk for that. So, and from that can be seizures, strokes, there's a downfall there. And sometimes lack of prenatal care, too. People are scared, they don't get their prenatal care, and then they have, worse outcomes, which will affect them for the rest of their lives potentially. So yeah, that's an interesting perspective to say that, pregnancy, it can be dangerous. There's morbidity, mortality, which we're trying to decrease in this country, and that's a whole nother conversation, around the world and here too, in the United States. But yeah, that's an interesting perspective, especially on their overall health, timing your pregnancies and preventing pregnancies and sexually transmitted infections and herpes and HPV. There's the HPV vaccine, that's good information to be put out there, the HPV vaccine. The pediatricians talk about it, but we know that definitely decreases the rate of cervical cancer, anal cancer, and throat cancer. But, it's good to get more information out there because we don't see cervical cancer rates have dropped significantly because of the vaccine. And that starts at age 9. You could start, getting that vaccine.
Do you feel like some parents are afraid to ask you about this stuff? Or some of the kids are afraid to ask you in front of their parents?
Yes, it depends. But most of the time, we'll try to talk to the patient, the girl, without the mom in the room. And they understand, a lot of the moms know, say, I'm gonna step out now, because they know why they're bringing their daughter in, so I can talk to them. Now, granted, the mom has probably already talked to them, but sometimes we just don't hear what our moms say. Okay.
Yeah, sometimes it's better for somebody else.
Yeah, so I pretty much reiterated probably a lot what the mom has already said, but then I go into detail. And so, typically it's oh, by the way, do you have any further questions? And we pause for a while, and then it's the, questions about how you could get pregnant, or, lots of, very sensitive questions that they're not going to get the answer from anybody else, or hear it, properly and accept it. So I feel like, yes, it is a better conversation when the adults are out of the room. And that is confidential information when it comes to, but obviously the parent has brought them into me. So it's in that situation, it's set up for a positive outcome, right, generally. And I try to get all that information out there. Like, people don't realize cold sores, which is a herpes-based lesion, can lead to genital herpes. And, I've married couples, and then someone has primary genital herpes outbreak, and they've been married for so many years, and like, whoops, it happens. So those are important little facts we try to throw in there when I can, but that's not talked about because a lot of people don't know about that, but.
But that's something that maybe they should be told as teenagers.
Yes, because that's the gift that keeps giving. Yeah.
Well, I think in part, I'm a little older than you. I came of age in that age of AIDS, where people were really freaking out about it. And on one hand, you had the people who were don't have sex.
Right.
Just don't have sex. And then there was all of my mother's friends who were widows, who I think from age 17 on were pulling me aside and saying, don't you bring no babies home to your mama. I'll give you the condoms. We'll give you the condoms. Don't you do this. It kind of, I think, for some teenage girls, and my daughter's friends have expressed this to me, it feels like it's all or nothing. That adults think they're either abstinent and playing with dolls, or that they're back behind the bleachers doing everything under the sun. And do any of your younger girls talk about that pressure of these stereotypes on them?
Well, that's a good question. The girls I see, a lot of the girls kind of talk about, I think they won't talk about the ones that they're expected to be abstinent, but they might say, yeah, my periods are really bad. I want something to help my periods, but it's really birth control. And I can kind of read it through the lines, how it kind of, when the mom's there, and maybe the mom knows but doesn't want to know. So we kind of walk that middle line, but yet they're getting information and they're getting what they need, you know? So I've seen that, you know, and then I kind of, you know, just give a little educational spiel about just here's some good information about, you know, if you ever become sexually active, and this is some good information for you to know, you know. So, you know, with regards to, I have had some moms come in, they think, yeah, my daughter's, I know she's, you know, she's of the age and she's got this boyfriend and I know they're going to be active, and, you know, and they get them in right away, you know, which is good. You know, sometimes sooner than that would have been better, but usually that's the case, because, yeah. But
yeah, by the time the mother knows, it's probably already happened.
Yeah.
Oh God, please no.
Yeah. Yeah. I could tell stories, but not for here.
Not for here.
No. So, but yeah, I mean, I think you know, having that, I think coming to me is you know, coming to an OB-GYN, it's a lot of that's driven by the mother figure in the family unit, to bring them. I've had grandmothers bring in daughters to start them on birth control, you know, because they know they're sexually active. So that's good, and I praise that grandmother for doing that, because that's a good thing. But it's the before seeing me is the thing that getting that word out, and you know, and families, yes, need to run the families unit as they see fit, but with regards to education, that's accepted, but that's a tricky line. We were talking about, you know, banned books and that sort of thing, but there's got to be a middle ground there, you know, just getting that information out in a way that, you know, that's can be helpful down the road, you know, maybe not now, but maybe down the road, you know, and
plant the seed.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, you know, and then that empowers that child to be that child to be aware, that growing child as they become an adult, you know, so they're not as unaware, and that's that ignorance that gets us in trouble, you know.
Do you have any things that, I mean, if you could just have your ideal women's health class for maybe a 12 to 14-year-old, what do you think you would throw into it? I mean, for me, I would tell them, you know, if you are too skinny, if you are too light, your period may stop. If you take antibiotics, it interferes with birth control. But if you have bad acne, birth control can help that. And depending on who you are and what sensitivities you may have, not everyone's going to work. I guess, you know, and I'm thinking of that based on the students I've had, based on my own experience, based on the things I haven't known. But, you know, for me, the one thing that I really felt like I never got, and I'm saying this from my 50s, was I really wasn't, whether it was in that one sex ed class or anything else, I wasn't told the reality of pregnancy. And that pregnancy would change my body. And that pregnancy has dangers with it, like I had preeclampsia. I've talked about this openly with my daughter's friends, and it freaks her out a little bit. She's like, Mom, I'm never getting pregnant. I am never having babies, and it's your fault. You get no grandchildren. None.
Yeah, my daughter says that. She's like, why are they all screaming when she calls? That sounds painful. I said, well, it's just an exciting time. It's only a brief moment in time. The pain's later. As to quote my children, the both in my back seat, it was a few years ago, they're like, Mom, we're worried about puberty. I said, oh, what are you worried about? Well, I heard it's painful. I said, oh, just for me. Really more painful for me than you. And they kind of looked at me and I'm like, oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Well, it might be more painful for the parents. Nobody told me about the mood swings.
Oh man, yeah.
It was like, whoop.
Yeah.
I swear, one moment I have the angel child, and the next moment I've got a snarling Rottweiler.
Yeah.
And I've gone through this twice, and I'm questioning my life choices for
Yes.
this.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. You're like, what did I do wrong? And it's like, but you talk to other moms, you're like, oh wow, I'm not alone.
Well, yeah.
You don't know about. I mean, there's lots of things that we don't know about. And women's health, what's to come. Like in a class, I would, talk about your period. How can we help your period? What's normal? And then it kind of goes, I think helps to go on that level, how to help them individually and empower women individually. Because I think we empower and we learn ourselves and respect ourselves, and then we make the healthier choices, right, for ourselves and in relationships, and if we choose to be sexually active or not, and to use contraception and how to prevent sexually transmitted infections. Those are things that I would cover. I would talk about their first exam, what to expect, what do women tend to have cancers down the road, and why we do mammograms down the road, why we do pap smears, and then there's pregnancies, and what does that entail, and what does that involve, and so they get a little tidbit of that, because that's good information to have, to package that away, and that very well might help with thought process. Yeah, I don't want to be sexually active right now. This is not for me. I want to take care of myself. I want to get educated, and that's for later in my life. And the studies support that. So, but it's also filling in the blanks where the kids don't have that support at home. And there's lots of changes in middle school and identity and sexual identity, lots of things I'm learning from my patients, and all the stress and anxiety that goes along with kids that are struggling with that. And feeling like they're in a supportive atmosphere, I think is very important.
Well, I'm noticing that some of the kids around me seem to be feeling stressed by the social media. Mm-hmm. And the social media expectations of what they should be doing versus what they should not be doing.
Yeah.
And it feels like it's just a whole new gigantic stressor. We have the world's worst woodpecker across the street. Just don't worry about that. But it really does. And when I told my daughter that my students wanted me to start making TikToks, she and her friends, first thing they said is, no, you cannot go on TikTok.
Yeah, I've got the same thing.
No. You are a TikTok virgin. You need to stay a TikTok virgin. They said I could not handle TikTok.
Did you do one?
No, I have not.
You could collaborate. See if you get help you. I think you'd have some good TikToks. Yeah, there's some good OB-GYN TikToks, getting information out there about, contraception and how to make your periods better. But there are some good TikToks out there. But I'm kind of scared. I need somebody to help me.
See, I could get my college students would help me.
Yes.
But my daughter's going,
no way.
Mom, I stay on the clean side of TikTok, but there's a whole side of TikTok you don't know, Mom. And delivered in that, once they hit 12, we don't know anything. You realize?
No. Yeah.
We know nothing.
Well, it's embarrassing. You wouldn't want your mom having a TikTok, Can't go there, right? But, yeah, I've experienced TikTok. It kind of sucks you in a little bit.
I haven't doom scrolled TikTok yet. I've done Twitter, and Twitter just scares the daylights out of me.
Yeah, I don't do Twitter. I can't figure out. And then I'm like, oh, what did I post on Instagram? Oh, shoot, how do I get it off? I'm just so glad they didn't have social media in college. I was like, I wouldn't have a job, I don't think.
We got away with a whole lot more stuff.
Yeah.
If they had had social media in college, there'd be some really unhappy people right now.
Yes. I agree. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think our generation was the last generation to get away with doing stupid stuff and not having it on the internet. Yeah, forever and a day.
Yes. Yeah.
So, to try to get them to not do that. Oh. I have had the talk with my son. I've had the talks with my daughters. If anybody asks you for nudes, say no, they don't love you. Anybody asks you for certain types of pictures, say no, they don't love you. If they are 3 years older than you and they're trying to date you, say no because something's wrong with them. If they were fine, they would not be messing with your age.
Right.
They'd be messing with people their age.
Right. That's good information, because there's that social media education when it comes to the sexual health that needs to be done immediately. I mean, in social media, when it comes to bullying and lots of things, right? But then this is the one that needs to be understood and taught about. And I know they teach that in at my daughter's school, in elementary school, the police come in and talk about, you know, if you're on social media, people reaching out to you don't know who they are. You do not communicate with them, you know. And then you go through middle school, and as they get older, you just have to be, you can't trust anybody. You don't know who anybody is, and you shouldn't be talking to strangers on the internet, even though they might act like somebody your age, you know, but they really aren't. And
Well, yeah, there's a lot of catfishing out there and a lot of pretending to be people who they're not.
yeah,
And
that's scary.
we've had to lock down we would lock down my daughter's Snapchat and TikTok pretty hard, and she has to have her brother in them, which of course she hates, because to have Big Brother checking up on her makes her very unhappy.
No, that's okay.
No, because he can report back to me
Yeah.
on whatever stupidity is out there.
Yeah.
But, you know, bringing it back to this, it just feels like in so many ways we've limited teachers, and that means the doctors have to stand in for it. Is that an accurate perception on my part?
Perhaps, you know, I think COVID didn't help us, you know, in that
No.
respect at all. It kind of, that didn't help us in multiple levels, in multiple areas of all of our lives. But yeah, I think, you know, and I think also too, there's other avenues for where I'm at. I'm a little bit harder to reach than someone who's at like Planned Parenthood or a local family clinic or a local clinic or primary care doctor, your pediatricians. They're all in that same level, you know, but it's like, you know, I don't think we're as accessible as we could be, perhaps. You know, we're putting a lot on the teachers. You know, there's a lot of pressure on the teachers, unbelievable amount of pressure on the teachers and what is being taught, and you know, and you know, yeah, I feel like reaching out and having more opportunities where the professionals can have more classes, or you know, free to do that education and provide that to the students would be a good thing, you know, for the community.
How do we persuade these people who kind of would like to put the whole genie of the internet back in the bottle? They would like to send us back to the days, I don't know, of the Hayes Commission, and married couples couldn't be in the same bed on the TV.
Yeah.
We already have a couple of federal legislators talking about limiting birth control to married couples or banning it entirely. The governor of Mississippi refused to say whether or not today he would sign a ban on contraception if it met his desk, because two of his representatives have said they'd introduce it. With that kind of stuff out there, what would you like to see the community do to help to make this a better environment for the community? To have us talk to these people who, you know, to talk to these people who just in some ways are not being realistic about what's out there.
No, I agree. I think reaching out to your legislator or, you know, these people, they're other states, but, you know, we say they're out there, but the wave has been moving for years. And it's scary. It really is scary because it's going to really affect women's health, women's rights, and it's just, we're going backwards. We truly are. And so, you know, a lot of misinformation, you know, that just, it infuriates me, truly. I mean, if that starts becoming the case, then OB-GYNs are gonna lose it. I mean, you know, and I can't imagine being told I can't use, provide birth control for patients. You know, I see all walks of life. We use birth control for birth control and non-birth control reasons, and being told how to help, you know, our patients and their health practices and their overall well-being, and banning that is just uncalled for, and infuriates me. You know, it's just like, it's all, you know, I just feel like it's all against the women. You know, we're getting shut down. It's going backwards. It's like, well, what do we talk about men and getting their vasectomies, making those mandatory? They got to take responsibility. And, you know, so I'm just saying, we can go back that way, you know, and but it's just, it's not just, you know, where does it stop, right? And that I'm scared. Truly I am. And it's like, you know, I have, you know, reaching out to our legislators and supporting women's health initiatives and bills that are out there to protect our rights is what we need to do. I truly do. Mm-hmm.
Well, what's worrying me right now is already in Oklahoma and in Texas, my home state of Louisiana, this is amazing because Louisiana's crazy. You have to understand. I say this as a native Louisianian.
You can say
still
that.
family.
Yeah.
I can say that.
Yeah.
My people at home will tell you there's crazy people there, but they have managed to avoid this part. But there are women who are being forced to deliver stillbirths. There are women who are being put on planes who are miscarrying, who are hemorrhaging, because the way those laws are written, they're so ambiguous. Because so many of these legislators don't understand that the line between health and life is not clean.
No.
If that makes sense.
It's not,
and when
yeah.
you need a DNC and a DNX, there's not a formula. They seem to think there's some sort of formula, and if it ticks off A, B, C, and D, oh, well, then you could do it. But if it's not A, B, C, and D, then you're killing a baby. And miscarriages don't happen like that. And I don't know how to educate the ones that have confirmation bias. You know, until I have actually had men tell me there's no reason to use, there's no medical reason for abortion. And I will say miscarriage, and they'll say no. And I said, didn't your wife have a miscarriage? Well, yeah, she had a DNC after it. That's not an abortion.
No, that is an abortion. Bingo. That is the medical terminology. People will look at their bills and say, oh my gosh, that said I had an abortion. I said, that's the terminology. Your body aborted the pregnancy, you know, and that is the terminology. We use miscarriage.
Colloquial term.
Yes, we do. But technically, yes, that was a spontaneous miscarriage, incomplete miscarriage, or threatened miscarriage, or abortion. Those are all, that's what they are. They're abortions. And it is frightening because it isn't a black and white issue. And there are conditions where we'll find lethal anomalies, and you know, and patients may want to choose to deliver earlier and not carry the pregnancy to term. It's that choice of that woman that's getting taken away. There's that. Then there's the condition where if you have a condition with carrying a fetus that's has particular anomalies, sometimes our body might react to the pregnancy, and that mom can get quite sick and have heart failure and needs to move that pregnancy along, okay? And you need to leave that to the professionals, the physicians taking care of those patients, and having those conversations and those choices for those women. You know, and it isn't a black and white line, you know, and this is health care that's being provided to patients. And we don't need the government telling us how to take care of our bodies and how to, you know, taking care of our internal organs and what our choices are, and that infuriates me.
Well, yeah, because it feels like I was born in 1966. I was one of the first black babies born in a hospital in Slidell. So before that, it was midwives, twilight sleep, and the works. But women got to stay in the hospital for a whole week afterwards. And it just feels like we're going backwards to a time where miscarriages will kill women. And a time where almost where women would give birth and still bleeding, they kick them out to the fields or something like that. We're looking at this rising. The U.S. has the highest maternity death rate, mortality rate
of the
of the developed world.
Yes.
During
yes.
pregnancy and right
Postpartum
after.
hemorrhaging. And it shouldn't be that way. And this is not going to help that. This will make it worse.
Do we need to write a script or something to talk to people about this, to help them understand that this is going to kill women?
OB-GYNs have been doing it in the South. We've been doing it everywhere, and they're not listening to us, and which is unfathomable. I'm like, why are you not listening to the doctors who take care, who understand this? This is what we deal with day in, day out, and it's just, and it's quite sad and frightening. The direction we're going.
Is this where the community needs to come together and take a stand? Because we're seeing these polls that are anywhere between 63 and 89%, depending on how the question is asked. People who want to see, and I almost want to stop using the word abortion. Let's just say DNC, DNX, RU486, I can't even pronounce the other word,
Well, RU486, yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Let's use these terms and say, these have more than one use. And when you're banning them, you're killing women. Is it a mistake in some ways? And this is one that's a hard ethical question for me. I have friends who are just hardcore on, we should just talk about women's rights to choose, this is about bodily autonomy, this is Buck and Bell. And I'm going, but if we can talk about the fact that women are going to die, maybe that will stop some of this instead of,
looking at, women's rights and, that. Right, you look at it from the medical side of it, because the other medication you were thinking was misoprostol, and we use that multiple uses, and that's used for prevention of hemorrhage around the world. That little cheap little pill, used in a woman in Afghanistan, you're going to reduce in their maternal mortality significantly. And we use it more for hemorrhaging than anything, but there are multiple uses for these medications and these procedures, day in, day out. Day in, day out, we use these to save lives, to truly, yes, that's what they're used for. And if our hands are tied, what can we do? We can't do anything. And that's what's happening in the South.
All right, we got 5 minutes. I'm going to give you the last word. If you can talk to your neighbors, you can talk to the friends, you talk to the people who are watching this. What do you think are the 3 things we can do? The 3 things that maybe we can do to help make your life easier and to protect your ability to be able to help your patients the way you want to.
Yeah. Well, I think our main topic today is looking at sexual health education. I think having a more comprehensive programs in the school would be good. And comprehensive, looking at women's health in the girls, starting, what to expect. Not just that, sex, right? It's their own health. What to expect, what can they do to help themselves, and when do they need help? I think that's super helpful. And so they're getting the proper information. They're empowering women, and that helps down the road as they get older in making healthier choices. I think that's key. In order to do that, you need support of the community and the schools to bring the education to the schools. And I think that would be great. The other thing with regards to what you were saying, women's health, and the options, out there of particular procedures that are being banned, and how they are used, and other ways to help women that aren't necessarily for terminating pregnancy, but also miscarriages or hemorrhaging, and not limiting that, because that is definitely a lot of misinformation being out there. And I think, speaking up to our legislators and saying, hey, in our community, say, hey, this isn't right. We need to stop this because it's not doing any good for our community or our country or women in general, because women need to be taken care of. We're the main caregivers, for our families, and women's health is very important for overall well-being. And so that's key. And because we need to have more support. The women need to have more support in our lives because they've got a lot on their plate. And we're just making it more and more difficult, to take care of themselves and their family. And that's not going to help our country head in the right direction. We're just going to go back and back decades.
And as a historian, there was a time, and I'll say this last, there was a time when men would have 2 or 3 wives. And it wasn't that far ago, 1910, 1915. When we think about it, my husband's father died in his 90s, and he was born in the 1920s. And that's about the time we began to see maternal health going upwards. I think in some ways we have done such a good job of making pregnancy safer that people forgot how dangerous it is. And maybe it's time we need more public education. We need to talk to our neighbors. We need to talk honestly and openly about what this is, because, I love you and you're a great doctor and I want to make your life easier.
Oh, thank you. I just want to help, I just want to help women, and it's just, I just get to see a few in a day, and it's just like, you want to help more people because there's just lots of things that can be done to help us day to day, and I just feel like getting that word out is important. Yeah.
If we can get the word out, we're going to try to get the word out. Fingers crossed.
Right.
Okay.